working. So, I'm going to do a bio in advance. That's the way we do it. So like, I'll kind of, like do a pre-recorded bio and be like, hey, this is what Mark and I talked about. And so when we start recording your clip, it'll just be like, I just gave you a call and we're just like, catching up, right? So I'll just say, hey, Mark, how you doing today? Feel free to kick it off. And then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about your company. And then we'll just let the conversation go from there. And then at the end, we'll do like more, I think you guys do this on Straight Up Chicago too. There's like a rapid fire round kind of at the end with really easy questions. They're thought provoking. So yeah, that's really it. And we'll just go as short or long as it takes to tell the whole story and pick your brain.
Cool. I'm in. Okay,
great. All right. You ready? Mark, it's great to see you. How are you today?
I'm good. Anytime I get to hang out with you, I enjoy it. I don't know if we're alike or maybe you're just an easy guy to get along with, but I do. I actually saw this on my calendar this morning. I was looking forward to it. I was happy.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for, I guess, a couple of weeks since we booked it. I feel the same way. I got to say, one thing I learned from having meetings with you is I had no idea that Chicago had its own flag. And then I started wondering what the heck was in your background and what was up on the podcast cover. So I Googled it and I was like, oh, Chicago has its own flag. I was like, I don't think I've ever known what a city flag looked like, but it's a great logo back there.
Yes, my family makes fun of me because I've really grown attached to it. So I have it everywhere. I got the face, the mask. I got the pillow. I have like 7 or 8 shirts. And we incorporate it into the podcast logo too. So that even only takes it another level.
Part of your brand. I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm definitely going to ask you about that today. But let's let all the listeners and the viewers know your background and what you do. Obviously, you have a property management company and you're in Chicago. Tell us about, the size, how long you guys have been in business, your target customer, and what kind of properties you deal in.
Yeah, for sure. We're an 18-year startup, I always like to say. And we manage right now about 1,200 single 1 to 4 unit buildings. We have a couple larger buildings and about 1 million square feet of commercial space. Our portfolio is split between about 50% A and B class. And the other 50% C and D. So we have anything from the unit in the John Hancock Center to the stuff in wherever you hear in the news, someone gets shot a couple blocks away. So we have the whole gamut of types of properties here in Chicago.
Yeah, I love it. So everything from the bottom to the top. It's great.
Yep.
And so I heard in there was some commercial, but give me like a pie chart. What do you think is commercial versus single family?
So we're probably about, if you're going to talk about revenue, we're probably about 20% on the commercial side, and it's mostly industrial side. Commercial is a little tougher to get into. It's more of a byproduct of our brokerage side of things, but we do like commercial. We always say it's Monday through Friday, and there's no domestic violence.
That's great. So. Yeah, so about 80% is the single family resident, typically 1 to 4. And I know, Chicago's, I've learned from you just working together and hearing your stories and listening to the podcast, which we're going to talk about in a sec, that, there's an interesting dynamic there in Chicago. There's a lot of older buildings, then a bunch of remodels. So, a lot of property managers all over the country. What would you say to somebody if they want to know, like, hey, what's it like? What kind of properties are you managing there in Chicago? How would you explain that to them?
Well, about 60% of our housing stock was built before 1940. So we're dealing with old buildings. Most of them were built better, but when you have to go fix old building problems, it's usually a little more difficult. It results in updating electric or updating plumbing. Like there's a lot larger capital improvement expenses that go through it. And that works for us on the maintenance side, because we make money off of that, but it also means we have to be versed and trained and all that in those really larger capital expense improvements. We have anything from condos to we have a 56 unit building that's newer construction. Now newer construction to us is like built in the 80s, so that's that's the kind of funny thing when I talk to the guys down in Florida. They're like, oh yeah, we got this stuff is being built last week. I'm like, oh, new construction, like anything you built after 78 where we don't have to do the lead paint based disclosure, we're excited about. So
yeah, you're right. Here in South Florida, I mean, anything built in the 80s is ready to be knocked down and expansion, right?
Yeah.
That's great. And one term that I hear all the time when you guys are doing interviews on the podcast is I got to get and kick the bricks. And I always hear about the brick building. So I can just picture it. It's definitely a different type of a product. And I'm sure being in a big city, I'm sure there's a lot of compliance issues and codes. And so I'm sure every time somebody takes over a unit, there's probably 4 things they've got to bring up to compliance just to get it like safe and rented out.
Yeah, compliance is one of those things that it's tough for us to have to grow with here in Chicago, but it also keeps out the competitors, and the barrier of entry is tougher because we have local city ordinances, we have county ordinances, we have state ordinances, and then you have to deal with the HOA rules, and so you just have a lot of different things that really it helps us attract self-managers easier when you have to deal with all the regulations, and then it also helps keep the bigger national-wide companies out to help us be truly more local.
Yeah, but maybe one idea, Mark, is when you sign up a new client, you should mail them like a roll of red tape and be like, "We're going to handle all this for you," because I can't imagine all the things you guys have to go through.
I like that. You know what? I use the phrase all the time. You scared them, and it sounds negative, but you really educate them so much it scares them on some of this stuff. And a lot of these owners that you talk to, they're operating in ignorance. Like they know something out there that they're supposed to be following, but no one's really laid it out to them. So when I get on the phone with them, I like to lay it out with them, and they're like, "Oh man," like so.
Yeah, and it's changing all the time. And it's just an argument I always make. I'm like, anyone who thinks they've got it all figured out wants to self-manage. It's just a matter of time before they're not, it's not their full-time job. They're not keeping up with all the changes and the way the market's shifting, the way the rules change. It's really a sea of knowledge that it takes to do it at that level, especially with 1,200 units. So one thing I know, Mark, and that I'm proud of you for is you've been on the Inc. 5,000 list, 2 years in a row, or is it 3 now?
We're at three. We just haven't promoted the third one yet. I think that's all that comes out next week. But yeah, no, 3 years in a row. That's always been a huge badge that I've worn proud.
So imagine that it's a property management company. I think a lot of people listening to this within the industry would maybe not even really think of a property management company having the type of opportunity to become one of the fastest growing companies in America, which is really what that list is. It's amazing. So 18 years, the question is, how long did it take you to get to 1,000? Are you at 1,000? You've been holding those for a long time, or is the growth rate really accelerated in recent years?
Well, I think a valuable lesson that we learned that happened to us that I would share with other people is we didn't know what the hell we were doing the first 10 years. And, we didn't, we were just doing what we could to get business. We went through the Great Recession in there. So we were really just scrambling, a jack of all trades type company. But when we figured, it was probably about 2013, 14, we were like, all right, we are a property management company. We manage a few hundred units and we never even put a lick of marketing out. It was just word of mouth. Like we are a property management company. We don't have a process in place at the time, but it was then going from we are a property management company to charging what we are worth. I think that was one of the biggest things that helped us become the fastest growing, because I think charging for what you're worth in your services or helping your clients understand what you're worth then turns into revenue that turns into helping you hire other people, bring on new softwares, set up your own software and stuff like that. So a lot of understanding what you're worth and charging for it was one of the big things that helped us get to that Inc. 5,000 the last 3 years, and that as that kind of plays out.
It's a great share. Something I say all the time is, pricing is the ultimate positioning tool. You're actually signaling a lot to your prospects and your customers based on what you charge. And it's just very subtle. It's very subconscious. It's very compact, but they actually learn a lot about who they're dealing with based on what you guys charge. And I'm seeing, I remember the name GC, Realty Development. So it sounds like, my recollection is, based on that story you're reminding me, is that you were just in the real estate business for years. And then you started to realize, hey, property management is what we're really good at. It's what we really do. And then you got super focused on that. Is that a good summation?
Yeah, for sure. My partner, Cliff, who a lot of people know, one day I was with him at like a networking event, and he listened to me like tell somebody what we do, and he's like, Jesus, are you gonna like just go change his oil too on the weekend? Like, what do we do here? So, but again, we're going through the Great Recession and all that stuff. We had that mentality of like just survival, if anything, and coming out of that, it took us a couple of years to like really like focus on that. So that's probably important.
I think it's a really common kind of counterintuitive concept that people think, hey, the more things I do, the more business I can get and the faster I'll grow. When really it's very often the opposite, right? It's the more deep and focused you get, that the faster you grow. And I think that's a great case study of that.
Well, let me tell you this. So we like that pitch I would tell people, it's like, yeah, we sell your house, we'll rent your house, we'll help you find a house, we'll help your sister find a house, you want us to do the landscape, all that story. But the reality of it is like, all right, if we can get the property management in the door, all those other services will come if we present them the right way and sell them the right way and they're happy with us. Now, I'll tell you this is kind of a funny, true case story is we always present ourselves as a real estate company, a brokerage first, like we'll sell your building, we'll sell your land, whatever. And we do property management. And our numbers on our brokerage side actually went up when we started doing property management first and brokerage as a supplemental service. So it actually, that focus really helped both bottom lines really increase over in just a couple of years time.
That's fascinating. And I've definitely seen that in other businesses in other ways. Once you really get clear on what you're doing, it's almost like a dog whistle, right? It's like the right people will see it and they're like, that's exactly what I need. And then sure, you could, if you're good at one thing, you're probably good at other things. But it's just this counterintuitive opposite way of actually getting through the noise, right? Because the more broad you are, the more generic you are, the more boring you are. And it's just, there's so much noise out there. So people, I think, are really attracted to that specialization, which is great.
And we had a website that, I look back at some of the old snapshots I have, like, what the hell did we do? Like, you couldn't even look at it and truly know what we did. A bunch of pictures of houses, people happy getting keys, but at the end of the day, we people that are even finding us, we're not able to know what we do, and we definitely couldn't sell it to people that don't know what we do.
Yeah, a bunch of stock photos, a bunch of $5 words. Half the copy was probably copied from some other real estate website. That's what I see all the time.
Yep,
it is everyone's first generation website, so don't feel bad about that. But I do want to ask you about, specialization, and particularly, I know you've got a really solid, successful, unique selling proposition. So not only do you tell people that you do property management, but you actually are able to differentiate why somebody should work with you right out of the gate. And I think you've even trademarked it. Would you share that USP with us?
Yeah, definitely. And it comes from working with you. And at the time it was Juicy Results, now the newly company. But when we were working together with you, Jeremy, you helped pull out of us what we do good. And we end up trademarking Chicago's responsive property manager. And it wasn't like we trademarked it and we started becoming responsive. We were already literally tracking how long it takes us back to get on emails. We were already saying, hey, if you don't answer the phone by the third ring, you're not going to fit for this company. So we were already doing those things. So it wasn't like we had to create it. And I think every company like we has that like specialization and why you should work with them. And I think some of the words USP or what's, I think some of those get drowned out, or people don't really realize the value in really trying to figure that out. And Jeremy, it took us 8-9 weeks with you to do what we did. And it coming out in the focus attention. We're all property managers, we're all moving fast, and you might spend 15 minutes here trying to figure out your vision, which is the entire course of your company and who you are and all that. You kind of do that stuff in passing, when that's the stuff you should really be focusing on. The EOS world terminology, that's your rocks of figuring out what your unique position is and so forth. So I think that's the number one. That's another huge thing that anyone that's trying to grow just needs to realize, like, who are you? There's so many property managers. So in any one of these cities, even these tertiary cities, you have a dozen or so property managers to choose from. And why are people going to, and if they talk to 3 or 4, they have to know why you're different. And it can't be corny. Like, it can't be something like, we're going to give you good service. Like, we're going to give you specific type of service, and maybe it's handheld or personalization, whatever it might be, but it just has to be specific.
Well said. It is, like we said, that dog whistle or that lightning bolt that attracts people in. What does that actually look like? I think a lot of people hear the USP idea and they think it's just something we get in a boardroom and we come up with on some Tuesday, and then it's like kind of like never really used again. How are you actually using this specialization?
Well, you can't. So this happens all over the world in any industry, but you get this USP and you have where it's just a marketing idea, and it can't be a marketing idea. It has to be, used the word earlier, culture. Like, it has to be built into your culture. It has to be, responsive for us is a core value. When we're interviewing you to work here, if you can't be responsive, and if you look at your personal email tonight, and you have over 2,000 emails in it, you're probably not a good fit for us. So, using that across the gamut of the entire organization, not only on the marketing front, is really, that's how you actually have the longevity of it actually being real. So first and foremost, but secondly, what you come up with, everyone has to buy into it. Everyone has to buy into the concept of, for us being responsive and understanding that if we're going to get to our growth goals, we have to be responsive, and that's how we're going to get business. That's how our tenants are going to be happy. We call them residents. That's how our owners are going to be happy, and we call them clients. And just understanding that if we could solve that, which I think is a big industry problem for us, that's how we kind of approach the word responsive. Is people expect that, and a lot of our competitors are not. So that can help us just keep business and get new business.
Yeah, I the thing that I really take out of that was how authentic it was for you. Once you guys got to this concept, it was like a real eureka moment. And then you were just kind of looking back in hindsight, and everything you were doing, the decisions you were making with employees, the systems you were probably investing in. I remember that you were just like, yeah, this is exactly what we do. We just finally have a way to bottle it up and label it in a way where I can actually give it to someone and it's immediately apparent. And that takes work. As you said, we went back and forth on that. What is that one thing? Because when you do decide to focus on responsive, you're saying no to 4 or 5 other things you do really well as well, which are equal, players at the table. But you're like, no, we're all in on this one. But now you get your foot in the door, right? And then people know, like, hey, at least I know what Mark stands for. And if I'm the kind of person that values responsiveness, I need to prioritize GC, right? That's really what we're doing. It's just shorthand math for people to understand who to filter out, who to talk to, and who's their tribe. And I think it's just as valuable for employees, right, as it is for clients.
Yeah. And the one thing is you're forced to live up to it. That for us, especially trademarking it, like, yeah. So trademarking it, I think from a public view, I know if I see something, they're a little more sophisticated as a company or organization, or maybe a little older, a little more mature. So trademarking it does that. But on the back end, you have to make decisions in your operation, your day to day, to be responsive. Every so often we get an owner that we might have not responded fast enough. Like, hey, so much for that responsiveness. But that jolts us right back in. That's the lightning bolt that says, oh no, we're not being as responsive, and zaps everyone back into place. So even an owner calling us out could still be a win for the operation.
Yeah, I love it. And I've just seen it all over the country. It's not like everybody needs to be responsive. That's not the only way. Other people, invest in other things such as, risk mitigation and security and things like that. And everybody's got their own dog whistle that they're listening for that will attract them. And I think that's the, key takeaway. And on the culture side, I really do want to talk about that because, and I know you've got a great business partner, Cliff, and you guys, kind of, divide and conquer in how you run the company, which we'll talk about. But I just want to hear about, like, what are the cultural decisions you guys have had to make in terms of who you hire, how you reward people, what you focus on, it's been conducive to all this growth? Because there's a lot of responsibility when you're signing up owners the way that you do.
Well, in case my third partner is listening, I got to make sure we acknowledge my third partner, Brian, who's actually probably, he came before Cliff. So there's 3 of us running the show, but we all have our very unique abilities, which actually really makes us fundamentally stronger. But, the hiring process, again, these are these pain points that I look back, and anyone listening, like, you have to listen to me in the sense of, we were always 6 months too late hiring somebody. And then you push you push to hire them because the interview process is just a pain in the butt because you're too busy, because you took too long to hire additional people. And the hiring process was always, we were behind on it, and we never took it seriously. And we only hired people that we liked and people that we in the room we jived with. So it wasn't until after we started using Culture Index, which now we use Predictive Index, where I'd walk in the office and be like, wow, like, I probably would never hired that person just based on, like, my interaction with them. And it was so important to kind of get past the hiring your friends, hiring the people you like, for us, in order to really play to everyone's strengths for the different roles. Different personalities do not work in different roles, especially when it's mundane office stuff. You can't have a guy that is all about winning and getting going when all he's got to do is enter the same 7 digits, like, all day long for two years. So a lot of that the hiring is the crucial thing. And then following the hiring is always the training, which is something that's an ongoing moving target that we've always tried to improve on.
Yeah, and do you mind just kind of giving us the breakdown of like what you focus on versus your business partners? Because I know you guys are all very active, doing a lot of different things.
Yeah. So Cliff is really right now, he's our integrator and our visionary. He's kind of sitting both seats. So if anyone out there knows a good integrator, we're looking to hire one. Anyone want to move to Chicago, keep that in mind. So he does that role. And I run sales, marketing, and onboarding, and just a bunch of other kind of owner type random things that kind of falls into no man's land. And then my partner Brian runs brokerage and the commercial real estate operation. So we all have really three big roles in three different departments.
And I asked that question because I saw that naturally, just kind of really getting under the hood and talking to you guys. And I see it over and over again until somebody is solely focused on new customer acquisition, whether it's just sales or sales and marketing, as you put it. Until somebody's truly focused on that, it's always the last thing people tend to get to, right? And so anything you want to share in terms of like your ability to just have this like, laser focus on growing the company and how that's probably been a part of your growth?
Yeah, so it wasn't until it was 2018 where I got kicked out of operations. So Cliff said, "I can't grow this because you have all these exceptions. You do this, you do it this way. Like, just get out. Like, go focus on getting new business and work on marketing and work on." And it turned into building an onboarding department because we didn't realize we weren't onboarding as many things as fast still until we started really focusing on the marketing. So that turned into an entire department by itself. But the yeah, so I actually came to you because, as a business owner on the side, I was always taking these BDM calls, like, and I'm sure a lot of listeners do that. It's like, all right, I got to get this work order done. I got to tell this tenant that we're going to be there Tuesday. I have to get this unit on the market, and I got to call this guy back because he might want to hire us. Like that was my entire career, and everyone listening, or a lot of people listening, exactly what I'm talking about. So it shifted all of a sudden to like, all right, I wake up in the morning, I got to find business. Like, whoa, like. It actually scared me. It intimidated me. It's like, now I have to like meet numbers and do all those things. So I came to you and you helped me kind of draw out what my future few years were going to look like. And I came to you also too, because if I didn't like this role, I wanted to be able to hire somebody, and you helped me put in the roadmap, the game plan for creating that BDM role that I'm still sitting in today. But that BDM role came with marketing for me. And, up until then, we had Lead Simple in place. We weren't using it the right way. We had Google ads that we were running with PMW, but we weren't really effective. It was just very generic stock ones that they provided us. We had our 4.5 videos on there, the 4 or 5 they created on YouTube from 4 or 5 years before. So we just had nothing really to work with. Our MailChimp campaign had the wrong numbers in it, like people contact wise.
Oh, numbers. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I came into like nothing. So I started from fresh here and getting to the marketing, man, it scared the hell out of me that first year. But because marketing is such a, hopefully I'm not rambling on here, but marketing is such, to me, intimidating, because the one thing I hate about marketing is you could do so much stuff and get nothing for it. You could spend so much money and not even be able to track the results sometimes. So being able to, so I naturally that first year went to outbound sales. Like, all right, I can't figure out how to I can't find anyone. It started off as I can't find anyone to help me put a drip campaign together. So I'm just going to start going on Bigger Pockets and just telling people what I know about real estate and helping other people and naturally it'll come. But so it was really getting the marketing, and our marketing, we started, when I started, we were getting about 30 leads a month, and now we're probably about 100 leads a month a few years later, but and better leads. But it was just kind of putting those official operations in place, which started as BDM, then marketing, and then turned to needing an onboarding position.
Yeah, those are great shares. And that, really was one of the things I wanted you to share, kind of coming in that position. What were the things that worked? And I'm sure you tried a lot. You probably learned a lot of what wasn't working for you, but something must have broke through, right? There must have been something that's creating this 100 leads per month, or the new, new doors that you're bringing on. So what would you single out as maybe your best strategies or tactics?
Well, I came into this disorganized Lead Simple with 1,000 people in it that didn't know which was a good lead or which was a tenant that inquired 4 years ago looking for a rental. So cleaning that up and getting that organized, at least to get into the right status. I believe I rebuilt some of those statuses out and
We had to filter out those people that were looking for an oil change on the weekend.
Yes, exactly. Now, I spent the first year in my BDM role looking tirelessly for somebody to build that for me. I was looking for the who, and that was probably my first mistake, because the message that it came from me in a unique way, in the way I talk and what I want to, the message I want to get off, wasn't some stock, wasn't really stock messaging. And to have somebody out of California help me build out that, and I never found that person either that would do it. So ultimately, after a year, I'm like, screw it, I'll do it. And I figured out my 5 different trips, or the 5 different people that I'm really dripping to, and built out 9 months worth of kind of messages every 14 days. Then at that time, Bomb came into place, started putting Bomb videos, getting comfortable. That helped me start getting comfortable with video too, which is something we could dive into more. But that was probably the first thing, is getting the, hey, you called me. What's your first image of me? And then it was just going cleaning up. When you Google your company or you Google your name, what comes up the first 3 pages? When you Google your town you're in and property management, what comes up? You're going to have all those, the Glassdoor, the Indeed, like, even though those are hiring platforms, you still want to improve those and get yourself 5 or 10 good 5-star reviews on those, because they're going to be on that first page when someone Googles up Nashville property management, Googling the Yelps and just the natural ones. I'm a big Google. I think, everyone has these different ones, but I think if you're going to blast anything out in Google, it's so easy. People feel obligated to call you if you're the number 1 person in the market with Google ads or with 5-star reviews. Like, it's like, they might charge too much based on their website, but I'm going to talk to the guy. There's got to be something about him. A lot of people like him. So I think there's a lot to say about just building your reputation up that really helps you get people almost feeling obligated to call you.
Yeah, absolutely. The reputation matters, and it's a huge signal for somebody who is not really sure who to call or like how to judge or what the buying criteria is. But it's a pretty easy knee-jerk reaction to be like, let me just Google it and call a couple people, right? And then you learn what you learn, and then obviously the buying criteria starts to take shape, which is why I love your USP and that focus on Chicago's responsive property manager, because I'm calling you, Mark, and part of the thing a prospect's looking to a salesperson to do is help them understand how to judge the service, right? I think we take that for granted sometimes. We just think the prospects know exactly what they want. They're all educated and figure it out. But really, as they're talking to us, they're forming those decision factors, right? Buying criteria, as I like to call it. And then all of a sudden you keep driving home responsive. And then now I called 2 more property managers and I'm asking how responsive they are. And they're like, oh geez, this guy talked to Mark. I know it.
Or they're not even getting back to them, or they take a day or so to be responsive, which then just kind of like naturally kind of ingrains that ability. So the, you didn't ask me this question, but I'm going to tell you this. But in the marketing side of things, I think there's 2 different fronts, and everyone that's listening comes, we're right now more of an investor market. We're probably about 75% investor and 25% accidental landlord. Accidental landlord might be, I just can't sell, I inherited this house, whatever. And I think knowing who you're marketing to for your specific market is huge. Like we have really 2 different sets of criteria when it comes to that accidental versus investor.
Yeah, I think it all starts with target market. And, as you remember going through that exercise with us, we don't even have a conversation about your USP until we know who you're focused on. And I feel like that's the fundamental decision and area that everyone needs to get clarity on, is just who are you built to serve? Because it's not everybody, right?
Yes, it's a decision point when you jump on the phone of which one you're talking to, and the conversation goes one way or the other.
And so is there anything else? Because you've mentioned bigger pockets on this call. You and I have had conversations. I just want to hear maybe if there's anything else you feel like has served you well that's allowed you to grow the business.
I think understanding real estate investment side of things. We did hundreds of units after the Great Recession as far as our own investments, and we have buildings now. So understanding the basic fundamentals, and you can find that information anywhere. You can find real estate 101, real estate investing 101 videos anywhere. And that is good to know. Now, not even for being your BDM or being your salesperson, like that's just good stuff to know in your own career. So many people, the cool thing that I like about property management and real estate is people love it. We have clients that are doctors, and we have an NFL player. We have a Major League Baseball player. Like they love talking about real estate investing, no matter what, because they're so interested in it. It's very glamorized on TV and YouTube videos and all that stuff, but people like it. So naturally, if you're able to talk about real estate investment, people are going to gravitate to you right off the bat. And if you sound like you know what you're doing, no matter who it is, what status that person is, or what their 9-to-5 job is, you're gonna be hanging a conversation with them, and they're gonna talk to you, and they'll come back to you when they're ready, or you'll be top of mind when it's time for them to do what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally an entire TV channel dedicated to flipping and renovation and property management when you think about it, right? So it is a natural fascination. You are really good at that. But I'd also add to that, Mark, what I think you're really natural and good at is you can talk about it in a very relatable way, right? You're not just using the super technical mumbo jumbo language that I might crack open a book and read. You're, because of the experience you have, you're able to literally just talk about it like it's a normal thing in a very relatable way and customize it to the people you're talking to. And I think that that's a superpower that goes a long way. So kudos on that one.
I'll take it. I'll take the kudos.
So, all right, let me ask you this, getting where you are, kind of growing the company, it's very impressive. You shared a lot of the lessons you learned and the mistakes or the miscues that you suffered through. What surprised you most? Like, looking back, talking to like Mark from 10 years ago, like what did you not see coming that was required to scale the business that you'd run into?
I could probably give you a list.
That's totally fine.
Well, honestly, I never thought we'd be able to, achieve stuff like the Inc. 5000. So that's a shocking positive in that sense. But I never saw growing being and let me word this way. The more people you have, the more dynamic the company becomes, the different sets of problems you have. And I never understood the kind of layers of you grow to a certain point, whether it be revenue or doors, and now all of a sudden these are your set of problems, or then you go to a certain point, now you have a little money, and these are the type of people you have to be hiring. So just not understanding the stepping stones of kind of taking it to each level is something that I didn't see coming. Back to kind of that earlier on point, is to break through each one of those points. It takes money. I love in the who not how, the whole entire a third of the book is dedicated to if you have money, you don't have a problem. And kind of charging for what you're worth, or making sure that you're going after services that are profitable will help you kind of break through those barriers and have to invest back into the company to kind of keep growing.
Yeah, I love there's a book, from the 90s, what got you here won't get you there, and I think just the title alone is just something we run into all the time, right? Like it's that new level, new problems. The old solution is no longer applicable to the new problems because they're just totally different. And I do like what you said. So you want to just give a plug on the book? Because I know a lot of people really like this book that you're talking about, the Who Not How.
Yeah. Who Not How by Dan. I can't think of the name.
Yeah, it's from Strategic Coach. I know.
Strategic Coach. Yep. But awesome book. I feel this Who Not How book is going to be one of those legendary business books that will, the E-Myth, the Rich Dad type books that people are always going to read over the years. This came out last year, but it's really about elevating yourself. And so many times, and including the podcast episode building the podcast out. I spent 8 weeks trying to figure out how to just get a podcast off the ground. I spent 5 minutes with you and another hour with somebody that you referred me to, and I was on iTunes in 8 days. So I was trying to figure out the how instead of figuring out the who of it. And it's a great book for any entrepreneur, any industry, just to understand that you might be looking for the person that needs to solve your problem. You don't necessarily have to be the person solving the problem.
Yeah, it is a fantastic book and concept, but I actually really, you really crystallized something that I've kind of had an intuition around, or had a strong feeling about earlier, that you said maybe sometimes you were trying to get the who and not do the how yourself, but it was something that was so core to the fabric of the company that it really couldn't be outsourced. Or if you like, I do believe as visionaries, as founders, there are some things we need our fingerprints on. And if we were to outsource it, by its very nature, it would dilute the specificity and the magic of the brand, and it would turn into something very generic that everybody else could have. So I think that's kind of the magic, that people have to remember is, are the context that people have to remember, that 9 times out of 10 it is a who conversation, but there's that 10% that you got to lean into, and that's why you get the who's. So Mark can go be Mark, and Jeremy can be Jeremy, and they can work on what only they can do. And it's that freedom and that focus that creates so much lift. So I'm actually really glad you brought both of those concepts up. So let's talk about the podcast. Straight Up Chicago. I love this. I remember I was there in the beginning, and you said you're going to do this. And Mark, I got to tell you, myself included, sometimes like there's a lot of people that start podcasts and they go nowhere. They get 8 episodes out, they get 10 episodes out. I know you guys are planning a big party for your 100th episode. I'm a big fan of this podcast. So walk us through what Straight Up Chicago is, and how you use it as a business development tool.
So this is one of those things that if I would have started a year earlier, I would be very happy. So the moment I started and got into it, it's like, why did I start the sooner type moments. But I'll tell you this, my partner Cliff, he was kind of giving me, we went to, wherever we're at a convention, and some guys talking about events, and you got to throw events and client events and investor events. And I hate events. I hate putting, there's so much legwork, mundane work to get it. There's a lot of work done. So someone's got to do it. Yeah. And then it snows at night, or there's a thunderstorm, and then no one shows up like that. Just like that, I couldn't get past that. So a client of ours actually called us up and said, hey, we should do like record a series about every single neighborhood. So Chicago has 77 neighborhoods. And I said, bingo, let's do a podcast, and let's even expand into the suburbs. So the entire Chicago market, and let's do a very street level type investing in this neighborhood type content. And what became our listeners is really, for those of you familiar with Bigger Pockets, there's a lot of generalities. There's a lot of nationwide their podcast is very general. You might talk about, and you interview a lot of people that are winning, right? And really we wanted to break down, whenever I stand in front of a group or talk to people, the best thing I could do is tell everyone how I messed up. That's what they're going to take away. Everyone gets sick of hearing like, oh, you did so great, and now you're on this big mountain. Like, no, you want to hear how I messed up so you could avoid that. And that was kind of what we set out to do this podcast, and break it down the neighborhoods and setting all the pitfalls that you have here in Chicago, whether it be the ordinances and the laws that we talked about earlier, the tenant laws, and there's just a whole bunch of different things, the different neighborhoods, the old buildings, like just kind of breaking all that stuff down is what we do. And, at first, what was awesome is at first I was worried. I'm like, man, we're going to run out of people to interview. I was very ignorant to how big Chicago is, how many people I don't know. So that was probably the most exciting thing about the podcast. And we're going to be recording the 100th episode. And we posted something on LinkedIn this morning. We hit 80,000 downloads this week. So it's so there's two things here. The podcast is the podcast, and we're entertaining a lot of people. If you 80,000 divided by the number of episodes, it's really not many. I mean, truly per episode. But what you get from this podcast is so much content. So every podcast we record, we pull out 10 to 12 2 or 3 minute clips. And it's basically me when you're asking me the question and I answer it, that's my 2-minute clip. Yeah. And then I could use that somewhere in another drip campaign, or I could throw that on an article later on. So there's so much content being created, and the funny thing is, it's actually it was never intended to be. It's actually been profitable. We're about 10 grand it's 12 grand in the on the positive side this year, just because people came to us wanting to sponsor it. So it's been a huge marketing tool that and then it gives you some kind of. It's just something, if you got a podcast and you got content and people will, this is your thing, your department right here, as far as being, what was that website you had where you look at someone's picture and you rate if they have authority or not? Like, yes, the ability to feel trustworthy of working with somebody that can do something. I think that goes a long way for us.
The genius ability, the possibility of me calling you and saying, I got a property in this neighborhood in Chicago. And then the light bulb goes off and you're like, hey, here's a specific episode where we interviewed somebody about that neighborhood or who's invested in that neighborhood. Like that kind of credibility is not easy to match, right? So I think it's genius. And you mentioned that it was in the black by $12,000. That's just the sponsorships. I'm guessing people have called you and done business with GC because of the podcast.
Oh yeah. So we built a separate website for it, and we have all these different enter your email and get put on an REO list. So we have, since it started right before COVID, we have about 600 emails that we add to our drip and we market to, and a handful of them sign up with us and so forth. So it's just a whole nother avenue of marketing that we go after. That it's fun too. So
600 highly targeted emails who already trust you, and
very specific. Yeah.
That's less than 2 years, right?
Yeah. Now, a lot of people say, I don't got the time for that. Now, even my partner said, man, you spend so much time on that podcast. And I'm like, I don't know. So I spend, it's an hour episode. We have people that do our show notes. We have people that do, Jemmy does all our production. I have my marketing remote team member that does all of the distribution. We plug it onto the website. It goes on iTunes. So it really isn't that much time. I'd say maybe in a year, I might put 60 hours into it. So, but that's well spent. And not only the podcast, I'm creating hours and hours of content that's being used somewhere else that can be used for years to come.
Yeah, creating a brand like that is it's the exact equivalent of compound interest. People, it's a lot of work up front. And just like, going to the moon, it takes like 80% of the rocket fuel just to get out of the Earth's atmosphere. And then once you're there, like everything gets a lot easier, and you know what I mean? And it's just like effortless at some point. And you're going to get even more. I'm convinced you're going to just constantly get even more ROI on that investment, because you've kind of broken through to the point where you've got regular listeners now. I'm down here running around my neighborhood in Boca Raton, Florida, listening to Straight Up Chicago podcast because I'm learning so much. Like the tips are fantastic. So kudos to you for committing to that and sticking to it.
No, thanks. I wouldn't have been able to do it without you, though. If it wasn't for you playing with Jemmy, I probably would still be trying to figure out how to get on iTunes.
Shout out to, if anyone's wondering who we're talking about, our podcast is edited by Flintstone Media as well. So look up Flintstone Media. Jimmy is fantastic.
There's about 7 or 8 other property manager podcasts that I referred to her that are using her. So
I heard. Yeah, she's got quite the property management podcast army. So maybe we'll put her in the show notes and make sure everybody gives her a call. All right. So, dude, this is awesome. I'll do this all day with you, but I want to keep it to a reasonable amount of time here. So let's go into the lightning round. Got a couple questions. You can take as long as that. Just because they're quick questions doesn't mean you have to answer them succinctly. So whatever you think they take. But I love to ask this, especially with people truly in the business for a long time. What do you think makes somebody a great salesperson?
I think you have to read your audience. I think in anything in life, whether it be a family outing or you're speaking in front of a business event, or you and me are chiming on here. I think, Jeremy, if you're kind of in a pissy, sad mood today, we might be a little different. I might feed into you and try to feed you a different way. But understanding who you're dealing with, what they're thinking, I think, I don't know if the chameleon's the right word, but just trying to kind of blend in with what's going on is going to help you really just get on the same page with people faster and make them want to probably kind of do business with you and talk to you or call you back, or making it easy for you to answer your phone call next time you do call them. So
fascinating. Yeah. I believe the scientific word is empathy, but it's not just having empathy, but it's also, being aware of it and adjusting accordingly, right? Just, making sure that you're syncing up with that other person. I'm a highly empathetic person. I heard another salesperson talk about that. And he's like, a really good salesperson, because they're at the table, the conference room table. And if the guy they're talking to has his arms crossed, they've got their arms crossed. If they're leaning back, they're leaning. They don't even know it. It's not even like, they're not even aware, but they're just doing it. And I definitely think you have that as well.
In person, my family always gives me a hard time because I'm the guy that's like, pushing off on the guy and joking and making a point and tapping. Like I'm very, touchy sounds creepy, but I'm very, very animated too. It's a Chicago thing, talk with your hands and so forth. So I think in person, those type of things help as well too, versus just kind of standing there being monotone.
Yeah. Enthusiasm goes such a long way, right? I think it's really underappreciated in any fluid situation. So great. Thanks for answering that. I always love to hear what people say. All right. So if you had to start a new business, or you guys had to expand in a new market and you couldn't take anybody from your team with you, what's 3 non-negotiables that like any business you're ever involved in is going to have going forward?
A killer online reputation. That's the first thing that kind of jumps into my mind. Yep. Going into see, The responsive. I mean, responsive works. We're just in a world that responsive works in any industry, any business that people want things today. And then a third, I don't know on a third one.
All right.
All right, we'll go with those two. Those two will make up for the lack of third.
So online reputation, and then yeah, it's clear that responsive is a core value for a reason, right? And so core values typically transcend an owner's business from if they have multiple companies. So that's a really interesting point. Well, it's serving you well, so I can see why you'd want to keep it.
Process would probably be the other thing. Just it took too many years for us to realize that you have to put things in writing.
And process. I'm writing those down. That's great. So what's next? What's the next milestone, the big goal that you guys are talking about and you're excited about?
Bringing a COO into our company is going to be a big deal here in the next, hopefully 4 to 12 months. We'll see how long that takes. The right person. So I think that's a big goal that will help us be able to really leverage. We've created some mini departments just for helping the operations just grow faster. So that's exciting. But as far as the sales and the marketing, it's just kind of continue down the path of growing and be able to service the same people at a future door count as we are at a smaller door count. I think one of the things that I think really excites me about this industry is not many people have grown that large yet. Just because it's a newer industry, at least we didn't know. You have some guys, bigger apartment complexes, stuff like that. But when you talk about specifically scattered site property management, not many people have really made it that big. Whether they sold out or they crapped out after 600-800. I think just being able to beat those odds is something that's really exciting to us, and be able to be at a larger door count and be able to still run smoothly and effectively. I think I keep pushing this, and I will next week at our quarterly as well too. I want us to become a training company that does property management. I think when we could bring people in the front door that don't have experience and train them on the industry and what we were talking about earlier, the real estate investing, you'll get a lot of able-bodied people that are excited to work with you. So as we can shift the mentality focus on doing that, which is something we're already kind of working on, I think that is going to make it just more exciting. I'm very enthusiastic about our industry in general, because I think there's so much opportunity in our industry in the next 10 years.
Oh, as am I. I mean, anyone who's heard me speak or anything I ever talk about, I'm just like, we're so underbuilt right now, and there's so much demand for the single family product, and there's such cool stuff happening. It's just a great time to be around it. But I love what you said about the training company, Mark. There's a lot of smart people I've met and a lot of books I've read about companies who have scaled, right? Which is what this is all about, like truly scaled by becoming training companies who just happen to do something else. I mean, the original example of that is McDonald's. Like, they were able to train people and systematize it. It's $1 billion company ran by 17-year-olds. Remax in I think the 80s and 90s, it was another case study that they did that. They said, hey, we're just going to find really amazing people and we're going to teach them real estate. Because you're really limited when every job role that you post online says 3 to 5 years of experience in this exact role. You're going after such a tight pool. It's the same as like trying to rent a property when you don't accept pets and you've got all these requirements, and like it's got to be an 800 plus credit score. You've reduced the available pool down so tightly that it becomes a constraint. So I really celebrate that. I think it's a great idea.
Well, if anything, I think we're not crazy about the experience, having people with experience, just because we do things very different, and we'd rather teach you our way, the first way, and then you can take that with you wherever you want to go next. But I think I love the fresh meat, I guess you call it, into the industry.
There's a lot of bad habits done trained with experienced people, right?
I agree. So
yeah, all right, that's awesome. And last question on that, about that goal. When you say there's not a lot of companies that have made it very big. What is big to you, right? Like, what does this company look like? Is it a revenue number? Is it a door count number? A head count size? What are you thinking?
So I think where our industry makes the mistake is really counting big based on doors. I think it has to be on revenue, because I want to manage better properties and be able to vertically integrate to them, sell to them different ways, like whether it be insurance or the rehab services or selling more properties or selling their property. Like I think the revenue number is probably the larger target, and getting, I mean, anywhere north of 20 will be something that we're kind of looking to go towards in the next few years.
$20 million property management company.
Yeah. And if we only have 1,000 doors still and we're able to figure that one out, I'll take it too. So
yeah, well, I know if anyone can do it, Mark, it's you guys. So I really appreciate you sharing all that experience, both on the upside and the downside. You were really generous with sharing all the mistakes you guys made. And I think that's super important. I know I've learned a lot more from the things I've done wrong than the things I've done right.
True that.
It's just a part of life. But let's tell everyone about where they can find you, the company, the podcast. Just give everybody all the information they need if they want to continue to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure you'll put my information in the show notes, but our podcast is Straight Up Chicago Investor. You could check it out on iTunes if you just want to kind of hear what we're talking about. We have a website with the same name. Our GC website is gcrealtyinc.com. I'm really proud of it, what we've done over the years. And PMW has helped us, but a lot of the content we have on there, we have a lot of our marketing that's out there, whether it be our drip, that points back to all the resources we have on our website. So don't get me wrong, some of it's copied from other property managers. So if you're one of those, I usually seek permission first, but we have a lot of cool stuff, including we just put on our website a few months ago a map of the United States with other property managers in other states that we refer. And if you want to be on that and doing a mutually referring back and forth, those are backlinks, and those are just another opportunity to kind of cross promote different companies, because obviously we're not competition in different cities like that, but we could also get that backlink of other reputable property managers. That helps as well too. So check it out, and reach out to me anytime. I'm always Jeremy will tell you, I'm always willing to add value to anyone that's looking for value to be added.
If somebody does want to be a part of that program, should they just go to the website? Is there a form? Do they email you?
Just send me an email. I'll give you my phone number. You can put in the show notes. I really don't care for my personal cell phone, so they could call it.
Maybe we'll just use your phone and not your email, so the spammers don't scrape it out there, and you know what happens.
Yep.
Well, I definitely attest to the generosity. I mean, Mark told me right as we got on the call, you were speaking to one of our other clients and sharing a bunch of ideas with them. And you always do have a lot to share, and you always are very generous with everything. So Mark Ainley, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you.
Anytime, man. I always enjoy hanging out with you.
All right.